Today I would like to talk to you a little bit about personal practice. I'd like to share with you some suggestions and also give you a little bit of an idea of what that looks like for me. If you recall, I did say early on that for me, walking this path, it is 365 days a year, 24/7. The goal is one of me always remembering and synthesizing the fact that I am both a spiritual being as well as a mundane being. That the worlds in which I walk, the natural world, the mundane world, the spiritual world, my own personal world, are all interwoven into the path that I've chosen to follow, as well as being interwoven into who and what I am and what I will become along that spiritual journey. Now, a reminder to you that there is no one size fits all for this particular work. It will be as individual and as varied as those who are walking the path. And additionally, it will not remain the same as you move through the months or the years of study, because as you grow and evolve along this path, so too what you find to be of support and bolstering to the knowledge base that you have, the experience that you have, and more importantly, how you now perceive the world. That's also part of the witch's path, is being able to be open and receptive to the changes that occur daily, monthly, yearly, in how we perceive our world and what contributions we are actually making towards change, towards sustaining, and towards building a new and better world that is for the highest good of all. So let me begin by saying that one of the adages that, and I believe I mentioned it yesterday or the day before, that is inscribed above the temple of the oracle is know thyself. The way that you can begin to know more of yourself is through the practices that you engage in that are independent of what you do with ritual work, with celebrating the sabbats, with your spell work, your high magic, your low magic. These are things that are independent of all of those things. You could think of them as being adjuncts and support systems so that you, who are actually the most important tool that can be used in all of this work, become a vessel that is flexible, that is adaptable, and that can also hold the open perspective of being able to see changes and new opportunities as they offer themselves up around you. So just as an example of some of the things that I do as part of my spiritual work, and that is my personal practice. Meditation is very important. It actually has been relatively recently that the term meditation, in the way that it was used in an Eastern philosophy, has been incorporated and integrated into Hermetic practices. For a very long time, for the most part, mainstream, a lot of the Eastern practices were kept separate from what the Western magician or hermeticist would do. Now we have the thought process and the realization that a lot of those Eastern practices are actually core staples of what we as pagans and witches have been doing all along. We just didn't use those terms or those names for them. Meditation sets you in a pattern of headspace and consciousness where you can learn to separate yourself from the outer distractions that are around you. A daily meditation practice is something that you will be able to build upon in doing your ritual work, in doing your exercises that develop your psychic capabilities. Just in handling the regular mundane world, meditation is a core component that we now, especially in today's society with stressors all around us, can certainly use the benefit of. What that meditation practice looks like does not have to resemble the mindfulness practice of Zen. It does not have to resemble you sitting for 20 minutes a day, twice a day, completely submerged in eliminating all thoughts and just trying to quiet the mind. It can be as simple as you bringing awareness to how you are feeling in the present moment and remaining in that awareness for even just 5 minutes, even, to be honest with you, 2 or 3 minutes to start, is a meditative endeavor. When you are out walking, when you are in nature, when you are in a space that is conducive to allowing you to drop away all of those stressors and those cares, that can become a meditative experience. Walking through the woods, being mindful of each step that you're taking on the path, being mindful of the colors, the light as it is shining through leaves and trees and shining on whatever path you're walking on. All of these are meditative pursuits. We just don't think of them in that way because normally our preconceived notion of what meditation is something that removes us from engaging in our surroundings. Now, I'm not saying that we are engaging to the point of distraction, but we also, as witches, need to learn how to be able to still ourselves, quiet our minds, focus our concentration and attention, which is the primary goal, despite what is occurring around us. So that we become, as I like to tell my students, we become the buoy in the midst of the storm. We become the place that is the anchor, that is the place that, although it is moving and rocking and going along with whatever is happening around it, it is still contained and it still is stillness within itself. So meditation is something that is important to my personal practice. Something else is every morning when I wake up and before I go to bed at night is offering up gratitude to those beings, to those deities who throughout the day have helped me achieve whatever it is that I wish to achieve. Even if there's nothing that I think is overt or special about that day, just the fact that I have awakened to another day, the fact that life is flowing through me for another day and that I am able to actually do the work that I have promised as a path of service is in of itself something that is of great gratitude. So setting aside time each morning or evening or whenever you feel it is appropriate for you to just simply offering up thanks to that which is informing and enlivening and impactful to your day is a good practice to have. This is something that when you settle in on specific deities or beings or energies that you choose to work with more intimately, will set up that door of communication. And gratitude is something that will generate more of the resonance of something like itself. Meaning that when you are able to place yourself in the state of gratitude, not just offering up the words, but literally thinking back to a time when you were most grateful for something and how did that feel within you? Being able to generate that is actually being able to generate an energy within you that reaches out into the entirety of the universe, seeks its mate, its companion, its likeness, opens up the channel, and then more will be drawn into you that will prompt you to offer up gratitude for. Something else that I do is being mindful in the work that I do that everything I am doing, I am offering up as a space of service to the divine. That means the mundane work as well. Now, what I mean by that is that I like to write. My working job, I work as a secretary at an administration building for a school district. So there are opportunities that I have during the course of the day with some of the work and some of the files that I engage in to open myself to a compassionate, loving energy. Again, always with the caveat for the highest good of all concerned. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means, what it truly means, a little bit later in this series when we talk more about ethics. But always offer whatever it is that you're hoping to turn around or spin a certain way with that saying, for the highest good of all concerned. And so I can use that energy sometimes to send out an energetic imprint to those situations that might need a bit of diffusing, or those situations where perhaps it just needs a little smoothing of the way for the interaction and the communication to be from a more solid ground. In my spiritual work, I continually am thinking about how what I'm writing, how what I'm teaching, how what I'm offering out there to the larger community can be of service to that community. What is it that I am envisioning people will derive from what it is that I'm offering? And in that case, it has nothing to do with me personally, me, Robin. I open myself to being a vessel through which something that is of a higher nature can move through me and use the benefit of my physicality, my corporeal form, to then share and send out in whatever way is appropriate. And those who need it will pick up on it, and those who don't, it will just go past them very transparently. Think of every action that you do throughout the day as being infused with you being connected with a divine source. Now, something I will share with you that I actually wrote a little something about after a conversation I had many, many years ago with someone is about the impact that we can have at a very subtle level energetically. And I entitled the piece, Just Touch the Doorknob. And my thought with this was that what if everyone who was fully present and aware in the power that they have energetically within the sea of life, of which we are all just pieces of energy forming the structures of what we look like in any given lifetime or situation. What if those who were aware of that energy were able to draw up into themselves the thought of infusing that energy with it being a gift for the highest good for all concerned? Meaning that whatever is needed by the individuals that touches is what is needed for that individual. Not trying to structure it or map it in a certain way, because everyone is unique in what their needs are. So my thought was that what if every time you opened a door anywhere, a door to the Wawa, a door to your office, the door to your home, anything that had a space where literally you were using your hand to connect with it and imbuing and leaving some of your energetic imprint on that space? What if you infused it with that thought process? And then what of all the other people who came after you, who, as they reached out for that door handle, were able to actually draw from that space what it is that they needed in a very subtle and transparent way? But you had set up the ball in motion, so to speak, for something beneficial to occur just from that simple action. We can do these things routinely. Another thing that I have done is also in the office space where I work, and there are many different offices, there have been times when there's been a lot of tension because of budgets and because people just generally were not satisfied with the things that were occurring in the workspace. And I would go in early and I would move from room to room And I would sometimes, I couldn't use a smudge stick because it would set off the fire alarms, but I would bring an oil or bring an herb with me, and my intention was to move through each of those rooms, clearing out and cleansing that space so that when my colleagues came in during the day, they could start with a fresh start in some regards without actually knowing what had occurred. I wasn't infringing on anyone's rights or infringing on anyone's energy. I was just simply making our workspace more conducive to being an environment where people could work collaboratively together and perhaps eliminate the distractions of their own personal needs and work in a collaborative setting that was actually for the highest good of the children that we are supposed to be serving as a facility of education. Some of the other practices may be things like occasionally visiting sites that you feel are particularly special to you. One of the recordings that I did earlier this week was at the playground, and I shared with you that that was a playground that our children would come to, and it was very special. Every so often, in fact, I will tell you, every year on my birthday, I have gone to that park. If it's during a work week, I would go during lunch. I've gone to that park and I've sat near the tree that we all designated as the fairy tree. And I've sat near that tree and just relaxed myself and engaged in all of the memories that that space holds for me. All of the times that we had fun at that park, all of the times that also I've used that particular space occasionally for some earth workings. All of those things I would allow. This was a yearly pilgrimage, although I do go there more often than that. But that date, that time was a special time that was set aside as part of my personal practice to go and actually consciously and with intention filled engage in the energies that had occurred in that space. There are a multitude of tools and disciplines that you can use. I know some people do chakra clearings in the morning or at some point during the day as part of their personal practice, and also as part of energetic workings. Some people do readings or writings. They get up and they write a certain amount each day in honor or devotion to whatever patrons that they may have. My thought is to share, to be creative. Be creative about what fuels within you passion for what it is that you're doing. Now, if you are new to this path, it shouldn't be that difficult to rouse yourself to a state of being excited about what all the potentials are. If you are not, if this is a path you have been walking for a while and you're looking for new and fresh ideas, my suggestion would be to return to that space. Remember what it felt like when you were new on this path and all the opportunities that you saw ahead of you. I was a professional ballet dancer for many, many years, and one of the things that I always encouraged my students to do as well when I was teaching ballet is the fact that no matter what status or level you achieve of expertise in whatever it is that you have chosen, do not ever underestimate the power and the change that is inherent in going back to the beginning. So what I mean by that is that even though I was a professional dancer, taking company classes, rehearsing for performances and performing, I never hesitated when I had the opportunity to go back into a studio and take an intermediate level class, take an advanced level class, or even sometimes take a beginner class. What that allowed me to do was to refresh my attitude towards what the muscle memory was within my body that I had for each of these steps. But it also allowed me to take them apart because I was used to learning the language, how to string them together and making them seamless. This allowed me to have a little closer look once again at what each of these components were, and then to apply the refinements of that to the language that I would put together in the story that I was telling, as they were all strung together seamlessly in one beautiful expression of music and of dance harmoniously combining as one. The same is true with this practice and this path as well. Don't ever underestimate the value of going back to those beginning lessons, going back to the first time you actually experienced the element of air, going back to maybe notes about what you wrote down regarding those elements. Which brings me to another piece of a personal practice. For many, many years, I resisted the usual admonition of my instructors to have a journal. To have a journal where you can write down your thoughts, to have a journal where you keep your daily progress, where when new things occur, you can write this down. And even though I love to write, I was very resistant to this journal idea, because to me it seemed as though this is wasted time. And I have to have the experience, and then I have to sit down and write about it as well? Really? So, as I moved away from that resistance, and also as I started engaging and working with other people, because this was also at a point where I was more solitary in my work, I realized the value of beginning a journal. It does not have to be an elaborate day-by-day, step-by-step filing of every single thing that occurred to you. The value actually lay in the fact that you can go back and look at where you were 1 year ago versus where you are today. You can also go back, and some of those, if you choose only to journal those highlights, what you consider to be the highlights of your experience, you can go back and you can refresh yourself with what that feeling was, much like going back to the beginning, as I was saying, with the ballet classes. You can go back and refresh yourself with a reminder of how that felt that first time you had that wonderful, profound experience of connecting with the divine, or the first time you cast a circle and you actually, as well as maybe other people, could palpably feel the difference in the air. The journal is a tool, an invaluable tool that you can use to look back and see what the stepping stones were, and more importantly, if you, and even if you don't at this time think you have aspirations of becoming a teacher or sharing your information of your journey to a broader community, you actually will find that if you keep a journal, you already have some ready-made lesson plans set up. Because by looking back at perhaps the things that stimulated certain things within you, you can maybe think about using those things to share with others along the path, that they might get not necessarily the same response, but they'll get a response nonetheless. So journaling is something that, as a daily practice, is very beneficial. It can be a string of key words. It can be 1 or 2 sentences. It doesn't have to be 3 pages long. It can just be whatever for you will be a reminder of what that day's work was. Because remember, we are witches 365, 24/7. So with this thought in mind, I'd like you to perhaps consider getting a journal. Pick something that is beautiful. You can certainly use a regular copybook or whatever, but then maybe decorate that copybook so that it, right now, whoever you are, closely resembles what that is, because that will also change as well. The pictures that you put in there, how you decorate it, in accord with how and who you become as you're moving along this path. So I would encourage you to perhaps consider, maybe even starting today, just get a journal. Start writing down thoughts, start writing down ideas, and it's also another way that it can become a huge beacon for you, that every time you open up that journal, it becomes something that is a beacon of light of resonance, so that more of what you have experienced will be attracted to that very thing that you have set up. I hope you've enjoyed some of these little tips and suggestions that I've had for you. The important thing is to make it your own. You are unique. What your personal practice becomes and looks like is going to change multiple times, even for you yourself. So get down to knowing yourself. Get down to being supportive, encouraging, and bolstering your practice. And get down to doing the work of learning what it is that sets apart each day, one from the other, as becoming a seamlessly interwoven, mundane and magical experience. Have a good day.